Hello and welcome to the Somerset Diverse Communities podcast. My name is Michał Purzyński and I am a BAME Community Engagement Officer from Community Council for Somerset. This show is about Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities in Somerset. Welcome to another Somerset Diverse Communities podcast. Today's guest is Helen Fielden, the Community Engagement Project Manager at Spark, with whom I'm going to talk about the Open Mental Health Community Project. Hello, Helen. How are you today?
Hi, yeah, I'm good, thank you. I'm enjoying the sunshine. It's a lovely day. Yes, thank you.
It is indeed. And I think the question, how are we, will be the key to our today's conversation, because according to Mind, the organization providing advice and support to empower anyone experiencing a mental health problem, the overall number of people reporting mental health problems has been going up in recent years. The amount of people with common mental health problems went up by 20% between 1993 to 2014 in both men and women. 1 in 4 people will experience a mental health problem of some kind each year in England, but only 1 in 8 adults with mental health problem are currently getting any kind of treatment. Are we dealing with a new type of pandemic, a challenge that the man of 21st century must face daily?
I think so, yes. It's a good question. I think, yes, definitely it's a new pandemic, probably not helped by the last pandemic. I think mental health, COVID had a big impact on a lot of our mental health. So, yeah, you were sort of quoting stats about massive increase in mental health difficulty and need for services. And I think that's, in the past couple of years, that's grown even more. So, yeah, there's definitely a great deal of need. But also, I think the good thing is that people are more willing to talk about mental health as well now. It's a positive outcome of the pandemic.
I think there was lots of stigma around and stereotypes around mental health, but these days people are, as you said, more keen to talk about well-being. They're trying to deal with the anxiety, depression, and all other forms. It used to be in past. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but there was we were more focused on psychiatric medication rather than other techniques. And these days we know that sometimes spending a decent number of hours per week outdoors, it's helping as well, depending of our needs, basically. But let's come back to the subject. Is the Open Mental Health Project a response to the growing needs of society? What exactly is Open Mental Health, and what are its goals?
So Open Mental Health was actually started pre-pandemic. So sort of must be getting on for 3 years ago now. It was set up in Somerset, and it's born out of the idea that there should be no wrong door for mental health services. So it brings together charities who are providing mental health services, like Mind, who you mentioned, and it brings them together with the NHS, so that then if a person accesses any one of those charities or the NHS asking for help, they won't be turned away. They'll be signposted into what they need, so that their needs will be met quite easily. So that's why mental health has started, and it's proving to be successful in also looking at people's mental health in a holistic way. And like you say, we've moved away from the focus on sort of medication and looking what can we put around a person in their life to enable them to sort of keep their mental health as good as possible.
So who can benefit from the project, and how? Do you have to have mental health problems to benefit from the project?
So, well, it depends what your definition of mental health problems is, really. But we would always encourage people to access help early. So you don't have to have a sort of diagnosed need. You don't have to be in crisis. We'd really encourage people who are struggling with their day-to-day life to get in touch. So they can get in touch via Mindline, or they can get in touch through email, through the Open Mental Health website. But the project I'm working on is looking actually at those people who. So I think Open Mental Health has made it much easier for people to access services, but we know that there are still people who find it very hard to access services for whatever reason. And that's the focus of the community engagement project that I'm working on.
What you're trying to achieve is to just identify potential gaps in accessing mental health services and find out what barriers are there. Is that right?
Yeah, so we find out what barriers there are, and we talk to community groups. So groups are out in the community working with people, and say to them, what do you think you need? What do you need to be able to help people to access the services that they need? And then we can look at creative ways of either meeting that need in the community. So it might be that we can use some 5 ways to wellbeing training to help community groups, to help the people they work with to preserve their mental health. Or it might be that we look at creating something new, or we just look at ways of how people can be signposted into the sort of core open mental health services. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and could you tell me a little bit more about 5 ways to wellbeing training? What it's all about? Is it one day, few hours, or it's something more on more regular basis?
So the 5 ways to wellbeing training that we're looking to use is 3 2-hour sessions that can be delivered online or in person. And it looks at simple things that people can do to preserve and improve their mental health and well-being. So we all know about 5 a day with fruit and veg. We know that that's good for your physical health.
Right.
And the 5 ways to well-being looks at 5 simple things that you can do to preserve and improve your mental health. Things such as spending time outdoors, connecting with other people, learning something new. They're all very simple things that you can do for free. And you can do something however bad you're feeling that day. There's always something that you can do to preserve your mental well-being. So we're offering that training out to community groups in the hope that then they can use it with the people they support, and sort of have conversations as well, just to be able to support people.
That's really fascinating by how you can improve your mental health by implementing such small things in your daily life. So as you said, veg or fruit, or spending more time outdoors, or just simple socialize with other people, and that makes a significant change in our approach to challenges. But that's great. But I've been on Open Mental Health website, and I've seen something about mental health champions. Could you clarify what it's all about, please?
So mental health champions is something that we haven't actually started yet. We're very excited about getting this up and running, but it's about working with people who are happy to represent their community and to act as a voice for their community, to help influence services and how services are developed. And so they, will be able to give us vital information about why people from their community might not be accessing services, but also they could share information like 5 ways to wellbeing with their community and help their community to preserve and improve their mental health and wellbeing.
Right, and from Somerset Diverse Community's perspective, we would be interested in terms of how potential barriers could be overcome by migrants, let's say. So people who decided to live and work in Somerset, but for some reason, you can only imagine that changing a place, country, and being in a new culture, using a different language, especially if you don't know the customs and habits, it's quite challenging. It may impact your well-being. And my question is whether this project is open to them as well, and whether there's any chance to overcome a language barrier.
Absolutely, this project is very much open to migrant workers. We'd love to work with them and to hear how we can make services more accessible to them. I mean, you can get an interpreter if you're having a talking therapy. Interpreters can be arranged, but there can be a lot get lost in translation and talking therapies as well. And I'd be really interesting to look at new and exciting ways that we could meet people's needs and help them to, well, hopefully, get to do things like the 5 ways to preserve their well-being before they come to the point where they're going to need a more focused therapy, but also look at ways of how can we best meet the needs? How can we set up groups? Would that be a good way of meeting some needs? And sort of looking at new ways that we can work together to do that.
And only because you've already been working towards those goals that you've mentioned earlier, is it any chance to share with us what you've been able to establish so far?
Wow. Yeah, that's a really good question. So we did some work with a couple of the community engagement workers on the project did some work with a group of deaf people
Mm.
and sort of said, what are your barriers to your mental health? What the big things that you need? And we were expecting to say, well, we need a signer at our talking therapies. And they said, well, actually, we can't find somewhere to meet. They didn't have somewhere that they could meet together easily, and they were struggling to access technology to be able to communicate with each other between meetings. So that was a really simple thing that we were able to help with to help preserve and improve people's mental health, because being around other people who understand you
Mm-hmm.
is a really important thing. So that's one of the sort of small things that we've been able to do. We're also going to be working with adults with learning disabilities to have conversations about mental health and to create a mental health resource in an easy read format so that
Mm-hmm.
they can improve their understanding around anxiety and depression, and so they know what to do if they feel that they need help with that as well. So those are a couple of the things that we've done. We're also, I think something we've learned from the work that we've been doing with refugees is that people put their mental health on hold, and sort of so from conversations we've had with Ukrainians who've just come to the country, they're not thinking about their mental health at the moment. They've got
Mm-hmm.
much more practical things that they need to sort out, and we need to sort of be laying the foundations to have things in place down the line, so that when they're more settled and sort of maybe then things become more difficult in terms of sort of fitting in socially and things like that, that might be where we're needed to be able to help them and to look at how we can meet their mental health needs, if that makes sense.
Yeah, by all means. And
Mm-hmm.
what should people do if they would like to learn more? Is there any website that they could visit, or perhaps there's an email address that they could use?
Yeah, well, they can certainly have a mooch around the Open Mental Health website. There's lots
Mm-hmm.
of information on there. But I'd love to hear from anyone who might be interested in becoming a community champion, a mental health and wellbeing champion, or would like to learn more about the project. Or I'd love to hear from people. So we'll pop my email at the end of the meeting, if that's at the end of the recording, if that's all right, and we can really love to hear from people.
Fantastic. And given that that our podcast is listened to by ethnic minorities, what message would you like to convey to them?
I think don't be afraid to ask for help. I think it can be quite a big deal if you've come somewhere new and you want this to be, great, and and sometimes it's not everything you hope it's going to be, and that's all right. And it's okay to reach out and ask for help. And you may think no one will understand, but there are people who understand, and there are things we can do to help. So please do get in touch if you're encountering any problems. Then contact Open Mental Health.
Right. And I think, perhaps we are taking that for granted, but I think it's always worth to mention that your service is free of charge. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. It's free of charge and it's confidential as well. So we don't pass any information on to other organisations without your permission. It's free of charge to access.
Fantastic. It was Helen Fielden, the Community Engagement Project Manager from Spark, facilitates the Open Mental Health Community Project. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much.